My name is Anna Elia, and I am the creator and founder of homeschoolingtorah.com. And it is my goal this year, 2024. You know how goals are. Sometimes you don't hit them, but my goal is to try to have more webinars. And we have some common questions that we have received over the years, and my daughter has so graciously compiled them into some ideas for webinars for each month. So this month we wanted to do preschool, and because this is a really common question all year round, but this is a great time of year to talk about preschool. And a lot of parents are worried that they're not doing enough for their little ones. And I'm going to tell you right now off the bat, I probably will not be trying to add that kind of pressure to you. I'm a kind of an easygoing preschool mom myself. My kids are all grown older than that, but I don't really believe in hard academics in preschool. So I do believe in some certain foundational things that all preschool students, see, I'm used to saying that, all preschool children, that sounds better, need to have in their life if they're going to excel in academics later, but really just in life, if they're going to grow up to be good people. And so I am the mom of 7 children. My oldest was a preschool student. My oldest son is 28, so I'm old. And I turned 50 this week. I am definitely over the hill. And my youngest is 14. So I have 2 kids still in school myself, a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, and everyone else has graduated. So I'm a ways past preschool now in my life, which is a weird feeling. And I kind of miss it, but I'm going to be a grandmother this summer. And I've already been getting some toys and hiding them in places that, I don't want my husband to think I'm cluttered or anything, but I'm getting some toys because I want to have some fun things for my grandchildren. Sorry, I just hit my mic. So let's get started. We're going to talk about 4 things that every child really needs in their life in order to just succeed in life. And I really think that this preschool time is the best time to put these things into their lives. Now, if you've been around me for a while, you know these are not new. I've been talking about them for a very long time. One of the very first books I wrote, I think it was actually the second book I ever wrote, was a book to preschooling parents called The 4 Foundations of Lifelong Learning. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And these are the 4 things I talk about in that book because I really haven't changed my mind. And at that time, I did have preschool students, or children myself. I keep doing that. So they are order in the home, respect for others, an attention span that can learn, and parental example. Because if you don't have the example in the parent's life, then all the other stuff really doesn't matter. So we're going to talk about each of these things tonight real briefly. And as we go, start to take some questions from you guys. And then I'm going to talk about 6 ways that you can incorporate these into your life. And I have a couple extra bonus things that I really don't have too much about on my website or blog. So those are extra little bonuses for you tonight. So I'm going to get started, first of all, with order in the home. Order in the home is exactly what it sounds like, and that is having a home that is orderly. And so this is not something that the preschool child can control. This is something that you can control. And I actually kind of feel that way about all of these things. These are things that we as parents or caregivers need to do for children. We need to help them have a home that is orderly. Now, why is that? I think having an orderly environment gives a lot of security. It helps us to know what is next. And I know that I'm like that in my life. When I know what is next in my day, I do a lot better than when the day is haphazard and everything is coming at me and I don't know what to expect next. Children with special needs do better when they know what is next in the day, and whether it's a time order or where things go, or even an order about who's in charge and who's not in charge. Those are things that are important when I say order in the home. Sometimes we get this by giving our children a good routine. So I'm going to just click that and stick that up there. A routine is just when we repeat the same things over and over. Now, routine could be time, and it could be a routine is I always brush my teeth and put my toothbrush right here. It could be the routine is, that we answer respectfully to the mom and dad or to a teacher. And so we want to have these structures to our life, that this is how we do things. I think a lot of times as parents, we say to our little ones, don't do that. stop that. Don't touch that. Stop. It's all no, 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 no. And I think we need to be a little bit more proactive. Sometimes we can say to our children, right now, I want you to see how well you can sit up in your chair and eat your vegetables. Okay, that's a terrible example. Let's go back to maybe cleaning up our bedroom every morning. And I think little ones probably should have fairly easy beds to make, don't make it really complicated for them. But instead of saying, don't come out here till you've made your bed. They're little, they're preschoolers, they're tiny kids. We need to say things like, okay, let's see how well we can pull the covers up. Let's see how well we can tuck that in. Let's see if we can put the teddy bear right here on the pillow. So it's all about maybe being positive in our routine and establishing order. I think order provides a framework for parents too, and we feel a lot more secure when we know kind of what to do each day. And when we don't know exactly what we should do as parents, and as more children get added to the home, it gets even more complicated sometimes to figure out what to do with your time and just all the possessions that start to grow like rabbits. We just feel better with a framework. With little children, I like to think of it as a funnel. And I'm going to make my funnel shape like this. I think you guys can see me pretty good. The funnel meaning at the very beginning of life, a child doesn't have a lot of freedom because they haven't earned the opportunity to have a lot of freedom. So you would want to give them order. You would want to give them a routine and suggestions, and I would even call them commands, but that's a Torah way of talking. We would want to say, right now we are going to have playtime with our blocks, and then we're going to do it right here on the rug in the living room. It helps me a lot to think with preschoolers, to think what to do and where to do it. And not just what, but where. Where should they be at when they do this? So let's have a book time. I'm going to give you this book, and we are going to sit on the couch and we're going to read it. Or mommy needs to make an important phone call, so I want you to look at this book on the couch for the next 5 minutes. And when mommy gets off the phone, I will come see you. So it kind of just helps to say what and where and give them a lot of guidance in that. And that really helps establish order in the home. Now, how can you tell when a child is not willing to put up with your order in the home? Like, you've got this great schedule, you've got a plan, you've got rules and ideas and ways you can structure the day, and your child's not on the same page with you. Well, in the Bible, we read that a child that is not going to be cooperative has wise eyes and a stiff neck. Now, what do I mean by wise eyes? Have you ever seen a preschool student who looks at you like they know more than you, and their eyes just ooze with false wisdom, and they have no intention of doing what you, the adult, who have been around this world for 20, 30, 40, 50 or more years, has said? That child is wise in his own eyes, and that's something we should watch for. Another thing you can see very clearly is if their neck stiffens up, like you can just see it, okay? If they've got that stiff-necked attitude, that is a good sign that they are not participating in the order that you have established, and you're going to need to address that and establish consequences and definitely work to change that attitude, okay? We probably won't go into that too much tonight. The next one, so after order in the home, is respect for others. Respect for others is definitely a Torah. My goodness, it's foundational to the Torah. Respect for others is taking the Torah law that God has established and the love that we are to have both to Him and to others, and establishing it in our homes and in our congregations and in our communities, wherever we go with our children. And children are not too young to learn how to speak with respect to others and how to treat others with kindness and gentleness. This would apply things like stealing. Don't steal. That's a Torah command, right? Don't murder. How does a young child murder? Well, they might up and back their sibling, as hard as possible because they want that toy. They don't have a respect for the person. They have a respect for the toy. And that's backwards, according to the Torah. How about showing honor? showing honor with our lips. And this is something that has to be taught to our children. We have to teach them how to show honor, how to say things like, yes, mommy, I will do that, or yes, daddy. Even a tiny child can learn to say, yes, mommy, even if they don't have much language. I will never forget my fourth daughter, and she learned to speak a little later in life than the other kids did, but she could still grunt it out, and she could say, and you could see by her humble eyes and her unstiff neck that she was willing to show me honor. And just had such an easier time of obedience when we worked on honor and not just spitting out commands. I want to make sure that my children are listening to me. That's a Torah command, to Shema, O Israel, to listen with attention. So when I say something to my child, I make sure that their eyes are looking at me. Their head is turned toward me. Like the child on the screen right now, she's playing with toys. If I spoke to her right now, I would expect her, let's pretend her name is Abigail. And I said, Abigail, I would expect her to look at me. And when her eyes have looked at me, then I would give a command or whatever I was going to say. And I would be much more assured that she would hear me. Okay. So Yeshua always starts out with talking about hear, So I think that's where we should start too with our children. Learning to interrupt parents is a way that they can show respect. Learning what is the proper way to speak to an adult? Is the child wise in his own eyes and stiff-necked, and he comes barreling into conversations with no respect for the adults in the room? Or does the child learn how to show respect? And of course, we show respect to the child back by saying to the friend that we're so busily talking about something with and saying, excuse me one moment, and then talking to our child. But it's the child needs to show respect as well to adults, to parents. And these are Torah commands. These are in the 10 Commandments. How about learning how to notice others that it might be in need? For instance, the children are playing on the floor and their toys are everywhere, and grandma comes in and she has a bad hip, and you have taught your child to scooch the toys out of the way and say, here, grandma, you can come through now. That shows a love and respect for others, because they've noticed. And we're not supposed to put a stumbling block in the way of the blind or the feeble. And this is something we can teach our children from a very, very young age, how to show respect to others, learning how to notice them and their needs, noticing that mommy is tired and maybe coming over to help her. It's nothing cuter. Noticing that dad, when he gets home, is tired or maybe needs a snack. Just some sweet things that we can do to notice others and the needs that they have. How about taking care of our possessions and the possessions of others? Putting things away at the end of playtime is taking care of the possessions that the Father has blessed us with. And it's all about how we word it. And as much as possible, if we can put our words into Torah language and say, we treat the possessions of others with respect. And there's a boundary right here. This boundary is those things belong to mommy. So we would not want to get into those. Those do not belong to us. How about going into someone's house, going over to grandma's house or aunt's house and rifling through her kitchen cupboards without her permission, or going into the living room and getting into all the CDs, and I'm dating myself, things in the living room that don't belong to a child and aren't really meant to be for toys. How about getting on someone's phone when they haven't invited them to touch it? So these are ways that we teach our children to show respect for others. I like a picture that I heard once where our children's hearts are like a warehouse. And in that warehouse, it's the parent's job to store information from the Torah that tells the child what is the appropriate way to act in this situation. Now, if a child has never had anyone hide God's word in their heart so that they know how to treat others or possessions or show honor or not steal or any of those things, well, then they see a situation, they, like the children in this picture, they want to play with the same toy as each other. And the little robot goes into their warehouse and looks all around and says, I don't see any reason why I can't grab that toy. And so they grab it, because no one has ever put inside their little warehouse of their heart any Torah law that says this is not how the Creator wants us to act. So it is the parent's job and responsibility to teach respect for others, And we do that through Torah law and Torah love. All right, the next one is increasing attention span. Now, this is the one that really seems to go into academics as our children start to get older. We tend to want to rush into teaching them the alphabet and the colors and how to count and how to say their name and all of the things, how to tie their shoes, and just so many skills. But really, the skill that comes first is how to pay attention. I already touched on this a little bit when I talked about Shema, or Hear, O Israel. But to pay attention is kind of an outgrowth of being attracted to something shiny and bright and pretty. And then next, to be curious, what is that? You can see this in a very tiny baby when they learn to crawl. And they look across the room and they see something shiny and exciting and fun, and they decide to crawl and go for it. Unfortunately, maybe it's something hot or electric or dangerous or expensive. And so we have to put boundaries on it. I'm getting off topic. So let's say we give our child some toys and we put them on the floor with these toys. And this is, say, like a 8-month-old child. And the child is curious and they play with the toy, but how long do they play at that age? Not very long at all, because their attention span can't hold them to that curious and shiny and attractive object. As they get older, we have to help them grow their attention span so that by the time they're in, say, 5 or 6 years old, they can last long enough to make it through a 10-minute phonics lesson, right? Or a 10-minute or 15-minute math lesson. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult to learn. If a child is, say, 10 or 12 and they've never learned to pay attention past 10 minutes, they're going to have a difficult time on a math worksheet in 4th grade because they just have never learned how to pay attention for 30 to 40 minutes. And I think even us adults, as we go on Sabbath and we hear someone teaching and the teaching goes longer than we're used to, sometimes it can be very hard to focus our minds and pay attention. Sometimes when we do our devotions every morning and we're reading our Bible, reading 3-4 chapters, it's very difficult to pay attention that long. You know, I heard a statistic this week that the average American's attention span is 8 seconds. And before you get all upset about that, 8 seconds, I think about 20 years ago, it was like 12 seconds. So it's gone down, but it wasn't great when we were all younger either. We live in the information age and we are used to things attracting our attention as we scroll through social media. Everything is competing for attention. And what that has done is shortened our attention spans. We need to reverse this trend and help our children gain an attention span appropriate for their age. I think sometimes, especially for young children, you want to start it out at an attention span that's about equal to how many years old they are. And then you want to double it and then maybe even triple it. So for a 3-year-old, a 3-minute attention span is the beginning. And then let's go to 6 minutes. And then let's go to 9 minutes. And then depending on what it is, toys and playtime, you might even be able to get up to 30 to 45 minutes of playtime with a toy. I'm not expecting them to be able to have an attention span like that for a sermon, but for things that they are on their age appropriate level, that would be a good targets to shoot for. Attention helps children grow imagination. It helps them with problem solving, motor coordination, learning their gender roles. I know, I said it. How about physical capabilities, risk taking, reasoning? I'm trying to think of some of these other things. And basically, in a biblical word, attention span is called self-control. And I know this sounds crazy, but play is where your child can learn self-control, especially if mom sometimes directs what you will be playing with during this section of time. I know that sounds crazy. We should let our children be directed, right? Well, I don't know. You've been around the block a few more times than that child that's 2 or 3 or 4 years old. You might have a sense of what they need to learn. And maybe it is okay for an adult to direct their children and what they should be doing during that time. And saying, you know, instead of running off to shiny objects every 2-3 minutes, why don't we learn to play with just this toy on this time? So I would say that attention span, most of all, is having the skill to be controlled. One of my favorite techniques for teaching self-control is in the grocery store to help my child fold her little fingers when we are in the store and sit quietly when in the cart while I'm pushing around and getting groceries. Another thing is maybe a 4 or 5-year-old could be walking next to the cart and having to put his hand on the cart and hang on, or touch my skirt and hang on, or touch my purse and hang on, and having the self-control to leave his or her hands right there. It's a really good skill to teach a child to fold their hands, because this is attention span, and they can wiggle their hands around, but they have to keep them there. And this is a time of saying, wouldn't say, don't touch that. You'd say, let's see how well we can fold our hands. Do you see the difference? Okay. Last, but definitely not least, is parental example. I thought this picture was perfect because, generally speaking, what I'm talking about here is a husband and a wife and their parental example. That is the example that the father has set up, the ideal situation for parents to raise children. Parents who are married, parents who are devoted to each other first and foremost. Their first priority is to each other, and they have a strong marriage. I realize that is not true in so many homes. I think we were talking in the last week with another family about this, and probably between 75 and 80% of families deal with divorce, single parents, just all kinds of situations that are a reality in our world. And so parental example also needs to include the community with which you surround yourself, the support. I'm hoping that is a Torah observant community, that you have friends that are strong in the faith, that can hold you accountable and keep you strong and supported in your local area. But we are going to do the best with what the Father has given us, right? But parental example is a healthy thing. It is healthy for children to be raised in good homes. In the Torah and the Psalms and the Proverbs talk about that constantly, about the health of a child who is raised in a good home. And if you don't have that, to bring in support as much as possible so that they have those parental examples to look up to. It is an opportunity for them to see how the adults act and then model it. Remember, we just talked about play? Well, what do our children do when they imagine, and when they play with their dolls, and when they play with their cars? They imagine being a mommy or a daddy or an adult, just like the ones they see in their life, an aunt, an uncle, cousins. So if they see their mom and their dad having good health habits, for instance, eating vegetables, then you're more likely to see a small preschooler eating vegetables or pretending to eat vegetables in their playtime. If you see parents that have an interest in gardening, you are more likely to see a young child playing that way in their playtime. The way that we treat each other with love and respect, you'll see a child with their small toys and their dolls, or their their little people that they're playing with, are treating each other with love and respect, or they're hitting each other and wham, wham, wham. I mean, it's all about how you show them an example. How about the tone of voice you use, or the body language in your home? How about the way that you lead by example in prayer time, whether it's prayer before meals or prayer every day or Bible reading? So these are to be in a family like this is a privilege, a blessing, a rare gift. And if you have it, you need to guard it with everything that you have. And if you don't have it, you need to come up with ways to be creative to provide these examples to your children. And what about when children are misbehaving and they're with their siblings and they have parents and they're not showing respect and they're not treating others right and they're not doing the things that they should? Then this is a good time to isolate them to their room and say, you may come back and join our family and all the things we are doing and having fun with when you have changed your attitude. Those are good times to do that. So I could say so much more, and I would like to make sure that I have a chance to answer some of your questions. But these are 4 important things that all preschool children need, and I forgot to hit the button there, marriage and community. But I want to go into 6 ideas on how you could teach these in your family. And basically, I want to set up times in the day. And these are just 4 things. And I could go on and on. Like, there are so many things that we need to teach our children. I would encourage you to grab my ever favorite pack of sticky notes. If you have sticky notes, they're the best thing ever. And write down as many things that you want to teach your young children in a day or a week as you can think of. You want to include taking care of themselves. You want to include chores and the ways of taking care of their possessions. You want to include ways that you want to teach them things during the day. Maybe you want to teach them Bible verses or character qualities. You want to teach them Bible stories. You want to read to them from the Bible. You have a stack of other books that you want to read to them. You want to maybe have a time where they could play by themselves each day and have that quiet time to learn to have that attention span by themselves. But you also want them to have playtime with maybe older siblings or cousins. You want to have a time that they can play outside if the weather is good enough for that. You want to have learning skills. And that's when you teach your colors and your ABCs and so on. You want them to have a chance to be creative and develop the fine motor skills with creativity and to see their imagination come out in that. You want to make sure they have naps. You want to make sure they have meals and bedtime. Oh, I forgot baths. You need baths. All of these things are super important, and that's a lot of things. So get the sticky notes and start to write ideas and then rearrange the routine. And the thing that's great about sticky notes is you can try it for a day and then rearrange the sticky notes until you get a good routine going, something that is really easy to stick to. I recommend starting with meal times and nap times and bedtimes, maybe wake times. So that the food and the sleep are good, solid pillars to put all of the rest of the things around. And if you have older children, you've got to figure out where you're going to put their schooling, where you're going to teach math and science and all of that. So you could get colorful sticky notes and do like that. But I would definitely put the meal times and the sleep, because sleep is so important, and kind of get those as the bedrocks, and then arrange the other things. Now, here are some of the things that I would definitely add, and these are things that you will see in our Homeschooling Torah curriculum because I think they're important. Now, one of the things I want to mention in the Homeschooling Torah curriculum, and I'll show you in just a few minutes, is that we tend to repeat the same activities over and over again for an entire week. That's because we talked about order in the home and repetition, and how repetition breeds security and knowing what is next, and doing the same activities over and over and over again for day after day after day helps our children to say, okay, that's what we're going to do this week. Just I'll come back to Bible time in a second, but just as an example, we used to have these plastic bins that had lids on them, and the lids were pretty stiff, so my kids couldn't get the lids off without my help. And so we would put just a few toys in each of the bins, and we would put all of the bins on a shelf. And then at that certain playtime every day that we had figured out on our little routine, we would pull one of the bins off, and that was the bin that they would play with that week. For my children that were younger and maybe like, let's say 15 months old, they might be in a playpen. And I might give them a smaller bin with some toys in it that they would play with for 20, 30 minutes while I might get a shower or make dinner. And these toys I chose. They could still be curious and have attraction to these toys, but the attention span, I wanted them to grow and learn to do different things with the same toys, growing that imagination and the problem-solving skills. So I usually picked out their toys. And then next week we would shuffle them out and bring another one down. And I had a couple like bins for like rainy days or special times, and that we hardly ever pulled down except for very special occasions. And those, maybe they weren't as great a toy, but they were so special by then because I hardly ever got to play with them. So I don't think that kids at this age need to have the huge top of the funnel. They need to have the small funnel. They shouldn't have the control of every toy in the house and they can pull them out and make a huge mess whenever they want to. No, I think we should put boundaries and order around their time in their days. Okay, back to Bible time. In Bible time, we can increase a child's attention span. their memory, because we can learn memory verses. We teach them how to discuss and answer questions. And this is the beginning of critical thinking skills that are so essential for life. And in Bible time, this is when I would read to my children, and it depends on their age and their attention span and ability to pay attention. I might read directly from the Bible, or I might read a simple Bible story book with pictures. Again, we gradually grow the attention span. Now, if you have older children and you're maybe a 2-year-old is born into a home with 3 or 4 older siblings, and you're already in the habit of reading straight from the Bible with the older ones, then the little one is not going to know any different. They're just used to that. But if you're starting a new habit in your home, then you might have to make it a little easier. Shorter times, more pictures, keep it simple, read the same stories over and over and over again. So in our curriculum, we do read the same story every single day for 5 days. And then the next week we get a new story and we read it every single day for 5 days. And sometimes at the beginning of the week, it's hard to get through that story because it's a little bit long and unfamiliar. But as we read it every single day, they get used to it and they come to love it. And it also helps when we're doing it that we can entice them. We can make it shiny and attractive and get their curiosity up by using fun voices when we read. And my husband's so good at this. And the characters all have different voices. And I mean, this is the stuff that memories are made of, right? So I like to read the Bible story twice a day to my children if it's a short enough one. And if there's a memory verse for that week, we say it multiple times, but at 2 different times in the day. Maybe even remembering at mealtime. You know, there are routines in your home at mealtime. You might put the napkins and the salt and pepper on the table. And when you do, it's a reminder to you to say that day's memory verse. And you just start saying it out loud, and the children will say it with you. It becomes a habit. A habit is a good word for routines. Okay, so that's a little touch of Bible time. The second one would be learning time. And these are the academic skills that they are beginning to play around with. A lot of people, when they think preschool, this is all they think about. And I really want this to be one of the lesser important things, because I think if your child has character, obedience, respect, love, treatment of possessions that in a Torah observant way, an attention span, then these learning skills come somewhat naturally. And so this to me is one of the later things, but it is nice, especially when they get to be 3 or 4 years old, to start to teach them these things. And there are so many ways you could do it. They are beginning to be ready to learn, and you can see that readiness coming out in the things they do in their playtime, or the questions that they ask, the why. And, it's just so natural. Conversation is the way that the Torah says parents are supposed to talk to their children. As you rise up, as you sit down, as you lie down, as you walk along the way. I totally mess up the order. You need to have conversations with your children, and sometimes getting a workbook or some toys that are more educational helps parents remember to have the conversations. But it's not really the children that need the workbooks, it's the parents. It's just the truth. Before they are ready to read, they need to learn that language is made up of sounds. And so you want to draw their attention to the sounds in our language. So make the sounds shiny and attractive so that their attention span goes to them. So for instance, if you were playing with the puzzle in this picture, you wouldn't necessarily name all the letters. That's lesser importance than the sound of the letters. For instance, the letter D, you could call it a D, but you could also say, can you point to the puzzle piece that says D? Can you point to the puzzle piece that says S? And so on. So you want to attract them to the sound. That is much more valuable. Getting them ready for math is 2 things. First of all, teaching them that counting is everywhere, and this should be in the kitchen and just everywhere. Count the shoes, count the teddy bears, count the forks and the spoons, count as you cook together. And again, it's relational and discussion based. And mom, you need the workbooks to remind you to count, but the child doesn't need it. It's more for you. Helping the child also to learn to live within boundaries for both reading and writing, to help them learn to color in the lines, to stay within boundaries. Our world says boundaries are terrible. do everything outside the box. But the Torah says, no, we have a box, and this box is for our safety and for our good. And I think we should teach children to live within the box and to be creative and flourish inside the boxes that God has created. So I know that's kind of a radical thing, but coloring is one of the best ways of teaching our children to live within boundaries, and it helps them develop their fine motor skills, which are going to be needed when they get into actual school subjects. Following instructions. My goodness, what a Torah thing is that? Following instructions. So worksheets are helpful when it says, okay, honey, you're supposed to trace that and stay as close to the line as you possibly can. Following instructions. That's really the purpose of that. Cutting with scissors, learning how to tell time, learning how to tell calendars. Have you ever gone outside with the little ones and how much they love to look for the sun and the moon, especially the moon, as it goes through all of its phases, and you can remind them, ooh, that moon means it's not going to be too much longer till we see a new moon and it's Passover time. And you can just go with whatever time of year it is. They love to look for the moon, and you can put stickers on little charts and all of those things. So learning time is academic, but really the purpose of it is much more important for their lives. The next one is creative time, and this is where they get to make things. We were made in the image of a creator, right? An interesting book I was reading earlier this week said something. Yes, we are made in the image of a creator, but we were made as dust. We have a lot of limitations. And sometimes when I was a small child, I would make the little crafts and be so frustrated because I couldn't get the things to glue together and it never looked like the picture. And I sometimes struggled to see my own limitations. I think that I can do anything. But creative time every day is a good way for children to develop the creativity that the creator put inside of them when he made them in his image. Things that you're going to need right here, again, is following instructions, but sometimes at creative time, you might have fewer instructions. It's also sometimes good to put an example up. You make one, Mom, and you do your very best job on it, and with your child, and then your child makes one and tries to make it look like yours, because that's the basis of good science. That's the basis of so much in education, is where we are looking at the model that our creator made for us, and we are trying to get ours as close as possible. For instance, making an airplane and trying to make it as close to a bird that the creator made look effortless, right? We make flowers and we try to make them look like the creator did. Music is an important part of creative time, and I like to play all kinds of music all through the day, but especially during these kinds of times. It's really fun. So again, in our curriculum, we usually suggest one creative idea for the week, and then various ways to do that same idea again. Now, I know that may sound silly, but if you've made a box and it looks like a car and you've put little wheels on it and stuff, you could make another one, and say you did it with a box. Then on Tuesday, you could do it again, but this time you could make a second one. Or you could make the village to put the car in, or you could now use imaginative play with it, or bring up some puppets. So it's kind of the sky's the limit, but it's nice to leave it to just one activity and shoot off of that activity for an entire week. And then the excitement as a new week starts. Sabbath is over, we come into a new week, and we have a new creative project to make. And you'll see that the creativity flourishes when there are those time boundaries on things. The next one would be building time. And by this, I mean building things with things that are already made. So just like in the picture, the little girl is going to build with blocks. Building time doesn't have to use expensive toys. It can use all kinds of things around the house. I know my grandpa was the king of making forts, and we would have so much fun making forts. And forts are fun, whether you're a preschooler or pretty much any age. And that's why we grown-ups like Sukkot so much. So building forts would be an example of building time. And there's just all kinds of examples. Again, repeating the same activity every day for an entire week means that you have to use your problem-solving skills and your reasoning skills to come up with new ways to do it. Mom, your attitude during these things is everything. Your attitude of, get on there and play with your toys, is not going to go as far as your attitude of, wow, I loved what you did yesterday. Have you ever seen this? And you participating, or wow, we should try this. And see, a lot of times attitudes are caught. So when children just come to expect that this is what we're going to do every day, they just go right along with. So this is a fantastic one for attention span. Some of these times, building time is one of them. Helping your child get a start in it, you might then be able to use that time to go with older children and help them with their schoolwork, or maybe get a little touch of the dishes done. My mom used to do the dishes while I was doing kind of a building time. And I do remember being a preschooler a little bit. I don't know how old I was. So let's say I was 4, because I'm not sure. But I do remember sitting in the kitchen, and she had things that I would stack up, or other times she'd let me play with the pots and pans on the floor, or she had specific things for me to play with. It wasn't a free-for-all, and she was washing dishes. I wasn't very far. I was definitely in her eyesight, and I loved being near her, but I was also doing my own thing and totally imagining. So I kind of think that's what I'm going for here. Another one that is super important is to have time to be outside in the creation that the Father has made. And in Michigan, it was cold today. Little ones love cold, and they love going outside in it. And it's good for us moms to do too, but much harder to get us out of the house when it's cold, just being honest. But inside, there are ways that we can still explore creation, even on bad weather days. But as much as possible, when the weather is good, having our kids have a chance to be outside, and maybe not every single thing planned and scheduled, but just a chance to lay back on the grass and look at the clouds, or let's talk about the bugs today, or let's talk about how these flowers need to be watered. We forgot to water them for 3 days straight, and look how they're sagging, and now we could water them. And just having conversations again, but sometimes this is where a curriculum can give you ideas and you haven't thought of them. And sometimes outside is just for fun. It's fun to squirt things and paint big water, like paintbrushes, and just use water with no color in it and just paint all over rocks and wash rocks. Washing rocks is so much fun. Just things like that. They don't have to be expensive or difficult, but spending outside time is very important for so many reasons. Finally is rest time. And in this rest time, I'm meaning that quiet alone time that children need to have. Our world is loud, and our world is overstimulating. And I think sometimes we think that we must always have music, and we must always have our phones and videos going, and TV, and just never ending information coming at us. And I think all of us need that quiet rest time where we can get away by ourselves and just spend time being quiet and thinking. And I know as a small child, I remember having those opportunities to do that. And besides naps, I'm just talking about those quiet times. I love the idea of having a basket, and in that basket, having things that we always have at rest time. One of the things we make in our curriculum is a little binder that just belongs to the preschool student. And in that binder, every page is a page they have made, usually over during creative time. And then we hole punch it, we put it in the binder, and it teaches some kind of character, or it reminds them of a Bible story, reminds them of a Torah portion, a memory verse. Maybe it just reminds them of grandma and grandpa, and a picture of all their aunts and uncles and cousins, a picture of their pets. And in this book, they can turn the pages that they had a hand in making and be reminded of the things that they have learned with you. And kids love that kind of stuff. It's fun to make an ABC book. We do that in our kindergarten curriculum, and our Word Power kindergarten curriculum, where they make a page for every letter of the alphabet. But you could do it for numbers. You could do it for geography. You could do it for art, famous art pictures. You could do it. The sky is the limit for the things that could go into this kind of binder. I do recommend having your children participate with you in making it, and so that they understand what the pages are and they feel that sense of connection with you when they're looking through it. But this is something that could go in their quiet time basket. And in their quiet time, I like to set a timer, and they need to stay. Remember what and where. You're going to stay in your quiet time area on the pillow. You may look at anything in the basket, and you're going to, so that's what you're going to do. And I want you to, you're going to stay on your quiet time pillow. And then the timer goes off. And of course, when they hear the timer, they know that they can get up. So, and mom, maybe you should have a quiet time during that time too, because you're probably tired and you need it. So I have 2 little bonuses that I don't talk about a lot, and that is to have, and these are not like rocket science, but I think we should talk about them more than we do. First is to have a bedtime routine. bedtime routine is the sweetest and most amazing thing for your children to remember as they grow up, that we always do bedtime in this order. We always, brush our teeth and change into clean jammies and get a little drink, just a little one. And I would always give hugs and kisses. And then daddy reads me a story. It gives me more tickles than mom thinks is appropriate for that time of night. And then everyone, mom comes in and puts maybe a little CD on with a few songs that we can listen to, and then lights out and good night. And I just think that bedtime routine that's really truly the same as much as possible every night. Things can change within, like the book could change and the music could change, but the order of things staying the same helps so much for a good night's sleep, besides the opportunity for you as mom and dad to have those quiet little conversations right before bed. And your child learns to put himself to sleep without having to be too dependent, because they know that you are just in the next room and that you love them and you love each other. But you had all the extra snuggles and attachment and love right before that bed. It's just a really, really special time. And I don't think any parent should miss this. You should have this in your home. The other one that I think, and this is going to go, I apologize, but to those who do have a marriage right now, so I want to talk to just you for a second, and that is to make sure, if you want your children to feel secure and loved and attached, then you also want to make sure that you and your husband are loving and attached to each other. And I recommend every day having a few minutes that you sit on the couch together and you talk about your day. You talk about dreams and visions. You talk about the little things, talk about the big things, and maybe have a timer for this. Maybe it's only 10 minutes long, or how much, whatever length your child's attention span can make it, plus maybe a minute or so to grow it, and just a short little time. And when you're sitting on that couch having your special time with each other, your child may not interrupt unless it's an emergency. And then, they need to use their proper manners and show honor and respect. They are to sit quietly and do their thing because you are talking to daddy. And that is incredibly important. And I've seen in families that we've given this advice to, my husband and I, that their marriages strengthen because they have that routine time to talk to each other. But I've seen that the children calm down, and that their worries and their concerns in life calm down because they see, I don't know, mommy and daddy are doing okay. I can see it with my eyes. I can hear it with my ears. So my little world is good. And I know that's not possible for everyone, but if it is possible for you, I think making a marriage time is something visible that your child can see. Other things that you could do is, making sure that you do give kisses in front of your kids and hugs. And again, the respectful tone of voice that you use with each other and kindness in your home, just to help your children feel that security. And when their life is when they are sure that mom and dad are okay, then suddenly they sleep better, they eat better, they calm down. It's not so terrifying as it would be when everything is not okay in that department. So if you're able to do that, if that's something that the father has allowed for you, then I do recommend it. So real quick, I've been yakking. I'm going to look through in the chat and see if there are any questions. And if you all of a sudden you're like, oh, I had a question, go ahead and start typing it, because I'm going to check it real quick. And I have one or two questions here that I can answer as well. So let's just real quick look down here. Everyone's introducing themselves, and this is awesome. Awesome. There's lots of you expecting new babies, lots of you with lots of littles, very busy. So absolutely. Okay, someone's using a different curriculum that I've seen before, and it's a good one. It's not about the curriculum, but it's about how we order our homes. So good. Does anyone else here have a question? I have a couple here. What do you do if you are trying to teach your children to show you honor, but grandma doesn't think that the way you're teaching it is right, and she lets the kids get away with not showing honor to her? That's an interesting question. So in Torah, there is a concept when when it's in the Shema, when it says, "Hear, O Israel," and you say, "You shall love Yehovah with all your heart, with all your soul. This Torah, which I command you this day, shall be on your heart. You shall teach it to your children." And then at the very end of the Shema, it talks about you're supposed to put it on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So that's the part that I want to focus on for this question. That when someone comes into your house, there is a rule of law. It might not be Torah. Maybe you and your spouse are not following Torah together, but whatever the laws are in your house, whatever the rules are in your house, everyone who comes in needs to abide by them. That's what it means to write it on our gates and on our doors. That's saying that, kind of like when you enter a town and there's a speed limit sign. Okay, we've been going 55, but now we've entered the city limits. Now the speed limit is 35. And it's posted right there at the gates of the city, so to speak. And by the way, you know, you can't use your certain, what are those things called when the trucks have the really loud brakes? We heard a truck go through our town today, and they definitely were very loud and squeaky. And someone said, "Oh, they're not following the laws." It's the same in your house. It might be a thing that you have to take your mother or mother-in-law aside and say to them, "Okay, I understand that you don't necessarily see eye to eye with us on all of our rules, but while we're here, it would be better for our children if we were all on the same page. And so these are the rules of our house, and then, you know, we would respect the rules at your house as well." You know, that's something too. Teach your children that whoever house you're at, it's their house rules, and we need to show respect. For instance, if you go to at your house, let's say at your house, it's okay to jump on the couch. Okay, it's funny. You don't have a big deal. That couch is so old anyway. But at your mother-in-law's house, you know that the couch is expensive, and she probably would not like it so much if someone were jumping on the couch. You can teach a child that we show respect. So we also need to talk to our in-laws and our extended family and have a discussion with them about keeping the laws of the house that we're in. And you might want to explain to them about the Torah and how it's written on the gates. They probably heard that verse before. A kind of a related question. In our house, our kids always had to call grown-ups by Mr. and Mrs. So like kids would call us Mr. Elliott and Mrs. Elliott. And people thought we were pretty old-fashioned for doing that. But we wanted our kids to show respect to elders. And that's a Torah thing. And that's a way in our society that we can show respect. And sometimes an older person, like 25, 30-year-old, who our kids are calling them Mrs. Smith, and they're like, "Oh my word, don't call me Mrs. Smith. I'm not that old. I'm only like 27. So why would you do that?" And you might have to quietly explain to them, you know, we were trying to help our children learn to show you respect. And they're only 3. And so you are 24 years older than them. And so that's a lot. And they need to show you respect because it's a Torah thing to do. Now, this depends on who you're talking to, obviously. So, okay, so that was enough of that question. And hopefully that answered that for that listener. I'm not sure she's here tonight, but I wanted to make sure I answered her question. So Megan says, how do you remain patient when your toddler is testing you nonstop? That is a good question. So I think I talked to you about parental example, and that you have to show patience if you want patience. But honestly, if your toddler is testing you nonstop, it's because they're looking for where the fence is. So my husband used to tell a story when he was a public school teacher about children that would be on the playground, and the playground had no fences. And so the children tended to all huddle in the middle. And it was almost like they didn't have any security to go play because they didn't know where the edges were. And there was another school that had a fence around it, and the children would play everywhere because they knew where the edges were. I think our children are begging for us to tell them where the edges are, where the boundaries are. If your toddler is testing you, he's trying to find out where your edge is. How far will you go before that's as far as you'll go? And you have an edge, I'm sure. So remaining patient, you mean that you won't blow up. And when you do blow up, that's how the child knows where that's the edges. And so next time they know they can go that far until they, then that may not actually be what you intended for the edge to be. You might intend for the edge to be always the same, always this, you're the parent. So come up with, what am I trying to teach my child? Be intentional about this. I have intentional things, and then set a firm rule in your mind. Okay, this is what I want my child, what I want them to do, and where I want them to be, what and where. Okay. And maybe in your mind, you're telling yourself, and this is why. Okay, maybe you have a verse for it to help you feel secure and being that dogmatic, because if there's a verse for something, you'll feel a lot more comforted, as you should. So let me know if you need help coming up with verses. But so for instance, bedtime is at 8 o'clock, and I want them to be head on the pillow at 8 o'clock. So that's a what and a where. I want the head on the pillow. That's a very firm expectation. Where? In their bed at 8 o'clock. And if the child is testing you, it's because they have learned in the past that you will change your mind. And that 8:01 comes, and if they keep whining and whining and whining, you'll be like, okay, you can get another drink. Okay. Oh, I'm maybe you aren't like that. I just know that's how I would probably act. So it's because I'm not being consistent. When I have to repeat a command over and over and over again, it's because I have not firmly set it in my mind that I mean it. And this is where my line is. And, sometimes people say, well, sometimes you have to use your mom voice, and other times your normal voice. I don't think that's true. I think you should have one voice. Your mom voice is your everyday voice. You shouldn't need to raise your voice in anger. It's the same voice. What matters is, what are you going to do if they cross the line? How are you going to show your toddler that you meant it? You need to come up with some kind of a consequence that lets them know that was the line, and it's not losing your temper or getting angry. It's just a consequence that was determined ahead of time. And okay, because of that, then this. Okay. And this is something that's good to do with your spouse so that you can be on the same page, because toddlers like to push the boundaries to see if your marriage is nice and good. And this is a good way to find out how your marriage is. So knowing what the rules are, having them thought out ahead of time and being intentional about them, and then holding to it, Mom. Be consistent. Don't repeat yourself. Say it once and mean it. And if they do not obey, then whatever consequence you've determined. And you do that a few times, and you'll find that your child will not test you anymore in that area, because they know you mean it. Now, you might have a great big gigantic test until they know you mean it. Now, it might be all out like volcano explosion at your house, but that's okay. Just expect it and live through it and mean it and do what you said, and carry on with your life as if you're not really seeing their volcano. Because and be firm, be consistent, don't repeat, don't threaten, do the things that you said, hold to your word, be a true testimony. These are Torah things. So I hope that helps. And I think we have a similar one. I feel like I'm constantly saying no, although I'm trying not to. So if you're constantly saying no, it's probably that your child is a little bit ruling. They're the ones in charge of the day. You haven't been intentional and set up the order in the home. The child has set up the order in the home. And then you're saying, no, that's not what I wanted. No, 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 no. Now you set up the order in the home. You say what will happen next and what is expected. Kind of like the whole thing of don't get out of bed compared to keep your head on your pillow. Like, try to tell them what you expect and then hold to it consistently. And it's somewhat playing staying one step ahead of them. They are smart, but they are trying to find out who's in charge. What is the order in your home? Who is the boss? Is it what God said, that mom and dad are to have honor and that children are to obey? Or is the child the boss in the house and mom and dad do whatever the child says, like he's a king or queen and you just do whatever they say? I mean, we can see that when we think about it, we step back for a second, but sometimes it's very difficult in the moment. And that's why I think sometimes it's helpful, maybe in those little couch times with your husband, you can come up with some of these little rules and be firm on together, united together on what they're going to be. Write them down and ponder them for a few days, and then go to your child and say, okay, today, this is what we're doing. And again, they're not used to it, so it might take a little bit of practice, but a lot of times, if you're constantly having to correct and stop, it's because you never had any boundaries to begin with. And at least that's what I found. Yes, character development is challenging. And yes, Abba does use all of it to develop our character. Absolutely. That's so true, Jasmine. In fact, in the book of Malachi, he says, Why does he value marriage? I think this is chapter 2 or 3. I apologize for not knowing that off the top of my head. But in the book of Malachi, it says that why does he want a marriage to be strong? Because he desires godly seed. I feel like having to develop character in our own lives is kind of the point of parenting. We find out where all the weaknesses are as soon as we have children, and that's so humbling. But you keep working on it and write down some of those character flaws, those ever-present sticky notes. Write down some for you that you need to work on character in your life, and then memorize those verses together with your kids, and you kill two birds with one stone. Hardest moment is when I'm on the phone. It's like all rules go out the window and chaos happens. Yes, in fact, in the book of Proverbs, it says, and I think I can get to this really quickly. I think I can quote it. A child left to himself brings his mother to shame. So then what do? How do you not answer the phone? Well, sometimes I remember a day when there was just a phone on the wall and it had a cord attached to it. And if the phone rang, my mom went running because there was no answering machine or anything. And she had to go answer the phone right then. And I also remember, I have a really good memory of being a preschooler. It's kind of funny because here I am doing this. I remember one time my mom was on the phone and it had a cord and it couldn't reach any further. And I decided that would be a great time to get into the drawer where she kept her lipstick and try out the beautiful color. And so I unscrewed it and then put it all over my face. And then I could tell she was getting off the phone pretty soon and she couldn't reach me. She could see me, but she couldn't reach me. And then I'm like, oh, I'll screw it back in. And I tried to jam the thing on, but I let the lipstick go out too far. So I smushed and smushed and smushed and got it in the drawer. And then she hung up. And then I learned that I shouldn't do that anymore. So, because she taught me. So, this is normal behavior, but when your child is on the phone or you are on the phone, maybe think ahead to, if you have to answer the phone at that exact moment, if you have to, what is an activity that your child could be doing? But you're going to have to train them ahead of time that during that time, this is what they have to do. And then mom, on your side of things, to try to keep the calls short and to remind the people on the other end that your top priority at that moment is parenting your children. And you don't want to leave them to themselves because they will bring you to shame. And that's what the Bible says. So keeping those phone calls short, keeping the social media turned off during the day, keeping our phones, being less active on them and more participating with the children that are present in our lives. And we can call them back during nap time or whenever, right? Breastfeeding is similar. It really is. You are stuck in that spot and they know it. So you must train them to obey your voice. When you say something, you mean it. And this is something that you train outside of that time. Training them that when you speak, they listen, that they are always to be where your eyes can see them. If your eyes cannot see them, they must come back. If they can see you, you can see them. And everywhere they are, you must be able to see them. And then you have trained them to obey your voice. This is training that the Father gives to Israel. He says, obey my voice. And so this is appropriate parenting for you to teach your children. If you want them to hear him someday, you have to teach them. And there's no better time than the present to teach them to obey your voice. Yes, you guys are all incredibly normal. Would you recommend how to have a ladies' Bible study while still having little ones around, getting together and studying scripture? It might be somewhat impossible at this stage. Boy, I feel like I'm just full of good news tonight. I'm going to go back to that same verse. A child left to themselves will bring a mother to shame. And I should look that up while I'm still on so you can have the reference to that. But having the Bible studies, there is a good day for that, and that's called Sabbath. And if at all possible, have them on Sabbath where there are other adults, spouses, other people who can watch your children. Taking turns so that you're not only taking from and receiving, or that you're also giving childcare to others so that other people can have that. You're going to have to work the practicality out, but I feel like that's what Sabbath is for. And then there is a verse in, is it Titus or First Timothy? I think it's in First Timothy, maybe Second Timothy. I can get these verses. I'm not very good at multitasking here, so I'm going to try to send them to you later or put them on the YouTube. so that you can get those references. But it talks about mothers who go from house to house and they're getting into trouble. Now, getting a Bible study is a good thing. And maybe you can manage it later at night or during nap times. And if your children aren't trained to take a nap, then you're going to lose that valuable chunk of time and they're going to lose the sleep they need for brain development. So they need sleep, they do. And you might need a little break. So nap times are a good time you could get together, maybe with a Zoom Bible study or something. But also 1 Corinthians chapter 14, I think it is, talks about if you have a question about the Bible, there is somebody who you can go to, and that is your husband. And I know that's not as much fun as the ladies' Bible study, but man, the picture that's still on the screen, those little 10-minute couch times, you can ask your husband those Bible study questions. I think that might be more of a biblical model. It feels like forever when your children are little and you're in this season. It really does. It feels like even Sabbath is difficult. You go to congregation and you have little ones, never getting a break from the little ones. And now that I'm 50 and my kids are older, I can see that you do come out of this, but I was in it myself for a long time. So my oldest is 28, my youngest is 14. So for 14 years plus, I had little ones and very little ones, and it was difficult. So I don't want to not show compassion when I answer these questions. Another option would be to maybe see if the dads would be able to take turns, arranging childcare so that you moms can have a ladies' night out once in a while. And that's a good thing. There might be ways, maybe teenagers in the congregation that would be willing to come in and do some babysitting. It's good practice for them and good training for when they're mothers. But if you don't have all of those things, I don't recommend having a Bible study and letting your child run crazy, because a child left to himself will bring his mother to shame. So those are some ideas, but I feel like I'm just throwing damp cloth on your ideas. But I think the priority at this point is ask your husband those questions. But this is such a short window that you can invest in your children. That is awful too. Yeah, someone said, yeah, hire someone to watch them. No one I would trust. Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca, for putting the reference on there. Recommending Bible studies via Zoom when the children are sleeping is an awesome thing that we didn't have. Back in the day when my kids were little, we did have things like Yahoo groups and email groups, and we would all send each other stuff. And I have to admit, my kids would go down for a nap and I'd run to my computer because I didn't have a phone. And I would check all the emails that came in from the group. I did. I loved it. And I love that connection. And I don't think it's wrong to connect. Just be careful that you're not running from house to house and not focusing on the responsibilities that you have. But the questions, the burning Bible study questions that you have, I think I can find that. I'm pretty sure it's 1 Corinthians 14, where you are, asking your husband the questions. Husbands love that. Husbands really do. And even husbands who don't walk in Torah really like it when you ask a question. Not saying they know the answer right then. They might have to go look it up, but it kind of builds up their respect, and it's going to build your marriage too. So those are some ideas. I know, crazy ideas. So yeah, it was 1 Corinthians 14, verse 35. I don't have my glasses on. So, all right. 1 Timothy 5:13 as well. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for doing that. All right, any other questions? And I will definitely check that. I could have stopped that share a while ago, but I'm kind of glad we left that picture up there. I want to share my screen one more time and real quick, just share a couple things. This is our Foundations of Preschool Parent Guide. And in the Parent Guide, we tried really hard to, let me get down here, to put in something for each of those times that we talked about today. We have the Bible time, and it's, A says at and ask, and then you're learning a Bible verse together. When you're learning a Bible verse with a small toddler, you're going to need to do things like motions, and big voices and little voices, and knocking on actual things and seeking around the room and defining what seek means. You might need to play hide and seek that day, things like that. And then there's a story a couple pages later to read together. So Hannah asks for a son, and that's a long story. It's a long story for children that aren't used to it. So you might have to build up to that attention span. We also have things like learning time where they're tracing and counting and so on. We have worksheets if you'd like those. creative time where this is a touch and tell box where you're hiding things in the box. They can't see what it is. You decorate the box and then hide things inside. So it goes along with asking outside time. Oh, wait, I forgot the build time. Following the leader. Yeah, that's a really fun thing to do. All of these meant to help a child learn to receive instruction and to follow instruction, and also to have respect and kindness in their tone when they speak to others. Outside time, if the weather is good enough, rest time, and they're building a little book to do, and a little conversation, having conversations with your children being everything at this point, and some parenting tips and so on. So that's our homeschooling Torah preschool curriculum, and we have some worksheets and such to help you with the learning time if you need it. If you didn't have this curriculum, you could do this on your own. You wouldn't even need a worksheet. You could just take a piece of paper and teach them a letter or teach them a number. Use crayons, use a chalkboard, use a little bit of cornmeal in a cookie sheet with sides, and do it with your fingers nice and big. You don't have to have a curriculum. The curriculum is meant for mom to help her to remember to do things. We have a book called The 4 Foundations of Lifelong Learning. This is the book I was talking about that I made back when my kids were little. And it says 2012 there, but I remember writing this. It would have been about 2005, as I remember what house we lived in. So the first time that this was written. And so my kids were little, and I was right there in the trenches with you. And so that's one of the reasons I like to recommend this book, because it's easier for me to say all these things now, but I don't have little kids at home, and maybe I've forgotten how hard it is. But this book was written when I did have little kids, and I did remember how hard it was. And I'm hoping that it will be an encouragement to you and give you lots of firm ideas on how to do things. We also have our foundations curriculum, the one I just showed you, it's on sale right now. So there's a coupon if you want to use it, and the coupon is littles. I have my 3 youngest children. I call them my littles. And right now my littles are about 5'8", 5'9", and 6'1", and I'm only 5'5". So my littles is who this coupon code is named after, and it's 15% off of this curriculum in the month of February. We also, so notice the price. If you bought the package, both books together, it is $61.95 without the coupon. If with the coupon, it's cheaper. But this month, or anytime at Homeschooling Torah, you can become a Homeschooling Torah member and print it yourself. Now, I saw someone in the chat say, I don't have a printer and ink, and that is incredibly common. Printers are expensive, ink is expensive. So getting the printed books is a great thing to do. And so those coupons are useful for you. This one is not available as an ebook. So if you want the ebook, definitely don't get it here. Come over and get a membership. It's exact same curriculum, but you also get other things such as crafts that you can do with every Torah portion. All of the Torah portions, the foundations of Torah curriculum. So that right there is a fantastic deal. And then you also have access to all of our word power curriculum for kindergarten and first grade, Copywork, which is like learning how to do handwriting, Arithmetic for K and first grade, science for little ones, and all of our chores. Chores is a curriculum that teaches, suggests chores that you can teach at each age and each week, so that you are making sure you've covered all your bases. So I just wanted to point out that this is $59. And over here, you just get those workbooks that are printed for $59. So if you have a printer and ink, if you don't have a printer and you still want to get something like that, use the curriculum on the screen, the PDF that you can see on your screen or on your phone or your tablet as a guide, and just use standard paper and write it there yourself and color it yourself. And you're saving tons of money. You don't have to print. If you have older children, then definitely consider joining Homeschooling Torah, where it's only $49 a month or $479 for the year, but it includes everything all the way through 12th grade. So you wouldn't have to get anything else. And again, if you can't print, if printing is a difficulty for you where you live, you can just use it off of the screen. It would be okay that way. So there was my little sales pitch. And I just wanted to make sure I pointed out, because the preschool curriculum is on sale. Again, the coupon code is littles. It's all the way to the end of February. So, and I wanted to show you how the things we talked about today are integrated into the curriculum to help you out. So I appreciate everyone coming today. I hope that my answers weren't too crazy. I sometimes feel like I'm a crazy mom, And because maybe I'm strict, except again, my mom voice is the voice I'm using right now. I remember when my kids were little, our home was full of joy and laughing and music. And yes, my kids are normal and they were naughty sometimes, but we had a joyful and happy home. And I want you to have a joyful and happy home. It's like one of my top goals in life is to look out and find out that there are other homes that are full of joy and full of laughter. And now my kids are grown and there's still joy to be around. We never had to go through the terrible twos or the awful threes or the teenage years that were full of rebellion. And I want that for you. And if I can help in any way, you reach out to me. We have a lot of resources on our website to help you. And that is my number one goal. And if we get to the end of my life and all we've done is establish more families that have joy and peace and, joy and peace in the Holy Spirit, as the Word of God would say, then I know that was enough. That was a good life. So if I can help you with anything of those things, let me know. Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate all of you. And if there was some question that you still have and you just didn't feel comfortable asking it, you can always reach us at support@homeschoolingtorah.com, and we are happy to help you out. All right, we're going to load this up on YouTube for anyone to watch later as a replay, and you are welcome to share this with friends or anyone that you think might have enjoyed seeing it. So shalom and have a wonderful evening. I'll let you get back to your kids and your family and all of your many responsibilities. Maybe you can put your feet up for a second. So shalom. Have a great night.